The Draugr Plague, Ash for Breath. Season 1, Episode 4. Kari screamed. The burial ground screamed back with stone. The sound came from every cairn at once. Stones shifted under snow. Frozen gravel rattled down the sides of old mounds. The little stolen flame at Kari's feet bent flat in the wind, then stood again, no taller than her thumb. It showed too much and saved nothing. It showed Enjal on his knees beside her, one hand sunk wrist-deep between two fallen stones. It showed his face white with cold and terror. It showed Torvald's cairn opening again, black at the center like a mouth under the snow. A dead hand pushed through the gap. The fingers were broken from clawing. Frost packed the nails. One finger still wore a strip of burial cloth frozen hard as bone. Kari tried to pull Enjal away. He cried out because the stones had trapped his mitten. The stolen torch had fallen when he stumbled. Its pitch-wrapped head hissed on the snow, burning small and stubborn, bright enough to reveal Torvald's face pressing up behind the hand. Not all of him. Not yet. Only a brow, one pale eye, and the shape of a mouth opening without breath. Kari screamed again, but this time she did not run. She grabbed Nijal under the arms and pulled until his cloak tore at the shoulder. The boy kicked at the stones. The little flame licked sideways and touched dead fingers. Torvald's hand snapped back for one heartbeat. Then it came forward again, lower, reaching not for the fire, but for the children beyond it. "I brought fire," Kari sobbed. "I brought it. I brought it." The flame answered by shrinking. Wind scraped over the cairns. The stones clicked and shifted. Another cairn opened somewhere to Kari's left. Then another behind her. The sound was not a single grave waking. It was the ground remembering every body Ulfric had ordered under stone without flame. Down in the village, Freya heard the first scream before anyone named it. She had been standing outside the longhouse with two cold torches and no permission to light them. Ulfric's order still held in the yard like a wall. No pyres, no more fuel spent on the dead. Pitch for boats, wood for crossing, fire for the living. Then Kari's voice cut through the wind. Freya moved before the second scream came. She snatched a coal from the nearest hearth bowl with iron tongs, pressed it into the pitch rag of the first torch, and blew until fire bit. The woman beside the hearth made a small wounded sound. She had two children under her cloak and only a handful of wood stacked by the wall. "I will bring it back as ash," Freya said. The woman looked toward the burial ridge. "Bring back the children first." Freya did not promise. Promises broke in weather like this. She lifted the torch and ran. "Torches," she shouted. "Axes behind me. No one alone." For a breath, no one moved. They had all heard the scream. They had also heard Ulfric's law. The village stood between two kinds of fear: waste fire and lose tomorrow, or save fire and lose children tonight. Ulfric came from the boat sheds with snow on his beard and fury already rising in him. Behind him, hides covered half-mended boat ribs. Pitch jars stood under a broken lintel. Every scrap there had a future use. Every scrap was already counted. "Freya," he said. She did not stop. "Your law is at the cairns. Come see what it saved." The words struck harder than a challenge. Men looked at Ulfric. Women looked at the unlit torches in their hands. Leif, standing near the longhouse wall with a strip of hide and a charcoal stick, looked from the ridge to Ulfric and understood with a sick turn of the heart that the children had gone where the adults had left. An argument unresolved. No one had told them enough. No one had made mercy safe. They had heard fire mattered. They had heard the dead had been denied it. They had stolen a flame small enough for a child's hands, and gone to repair what grown people had broken. Astrid stood by the door with her blindfold dark against her ruined eyes. She turned her face toward the burial ground before the third scream reached the village. "The boundary has opened in more than one place," she said. "Can you close it?" Leif asked. "Not with words." She lifted her chin. "Bring brine if we have any left, salt if anyone will spend it." That order made people flinch harder than Freya's torch. Salt was food held back from rot. Salt was fish through winter. Salt was children eating when the wind sealed the fjord. To pour it on snow would be to turn survival into a line and pray the line mattered. Ulfric heard it too. His face changed, not softening, but losing the clean shape of command. His no-pyre law had been made to save the living. Now the living were running uphill with fire, salt, axes and fear, because the law had left the dead enough body to answer. "Take 2 jars," he said. The words cost him. Everyone heard that also. Freya did not thank him. She was already beyond the last house. The burial ground rose ahead, pale under the aurora. Cairns hunched out of the snow like sleeping backs. They were not sleeping now. Stones rolled. Small avalanches of frost slid down the sides of graves. The stolen flame near Torvald's cairn shone weakly in the churned snow, and in that wheat light Freya saw Kari trying to drag Niall free. "Kari!" Freya shouted. "Leave the mitten, he is caught!" Kari screamed. Torvald's hand reached again. The little fire guttered between dead fingers and living boots. It kept him back only by the length of a child's arm. Freya drove her torch into the wind and ran harder. Behind her, villagers spread without being told. Some lifted torches. Some lifted axes. Leif came last with a burning brand in one hand and his writing hide shoved under his belt, because even now he could not bear the thought that this might happen unnamed. Astrid walked with one hand on a girl's shoulder and one hand wrapped around a brine jar. She did not hurry as the others did. She listened to the ground. Freya reached the children as Torvald's shoulder broke through the cairn. The dead man rose crookedly, stones sliding from him. His hair was white with frost. His mouth opened around a sound that might once have been Jarl's name or only the memory of wanting to be heard. Kari froze when she saw his face. Jarl stopped struggling. That stillness nearly killed them. Freya thrust the torch across Torvald's hand. Flame crawled over the dead skin. The fingers jerked back, not destroyed, but denied for one breath. She dropped to one knee, seized the trapped mitten, and cut it free with her knife. The blade struck stone. Jarl screamed as the last threads tore loose. "Run behind me," Freya said. Kari obeyed. Enjal tried, but another hand came from the side of the cairn and caught the edge of his cloak. It was not Torvald's hand. It was smaller. A woman's hand. The fingers closed with terrible tenderness. From the open stones came a low, broken murmur. "Child." Kari turned back, and Freya saw the shape below the cairn. A dead woman lay half under fallen stones, her hair frozen to her cheek, her arms locked around another girl from the village. The girl was alive. Her eyes were open. One cheek was pressed against the dead woman's dress, and frost had begun to join cloth to skin. Ragnar, Freya thought, though she did not know if she remembered the name or guessed it from grief around her. The stolen flame at Kari's feet went almost out. Freya lifted her torch high. It made the opened cairn bright for one terrible heartbeat. Torvald rising, Engel free but stumbling, Kari reaching for him, and the dead mother holding a living girl as if love had forgotten how hard not to squeeze. "Here," Freya shouted to the villagers. "All fire here! Children first!" The rescue began in the noise of stones, crying children, and the dead reaching through the place where law had left them cold. Freya made fear into work. "Torches low," she shouted. "Do not wave them. Hold the fire where the hands reach. Axes only when flame drives them back. If you strike first, you will lose your blade in frozen bone." The villagers obeyed because her words gave them something smaller than panic to hold. 3 torches came up beside her. Their flames bent in the same wind, thin but stronger together than Kari's stolen ember. Torvald recoiled from the joined light. He did not flee. He folded backward into the cairn like a man forced from a door he still meant to enter. Jarl staggered behind Freya. Kari caught him and dragged him toward the slope. A woman seized both children and pulled them into the ring of living bodies. "Count them," Freya said. Leif answered before anyone else. "Kari, Njal, the little one below." 3 children came up. Only 2 are out. His own voice sickened him. He had made the count too clean. 2 rescued, 1 held. The words sounded like a line from a song, and he hated them for it. Below the opened cairn, the dead mother tightened her arms. The living girl made a small sound. Not a scream now. Screaming needed air. This was only a pressed whimper, muffled by frozen cloth and the dead woman's breast. "Her name?" Freya demanded. No one answered at once. Fear had made the child's face strange in the torchlight. Snow crusted her lashes. Blood marked one ear where stone had cut her. "Sine," Kari sobbed from behind the ring. "She followed us." "I told her not to. She wanted to see the fire." The name moved through the people like a hand passing a bowl. "Signe." Someone repeated it. Then another. The girl in the cairn blinked when she heard it, and that small blink nearly broke Freya's control. The dead woman also heard. Her head turned by slow degrees. Frost cracked along her neck. Her eyes were pale, but not empty. They burned with one need so narrow it had become cruel. She looked at the ring of torches, then bent her face closer to the child she held. "Mine," she whispered. A man behind Freya made a sign against evil. Astrid's voice cut through him. "Do not make her only evil. That mistake will make you stupid." She had reached the cairn with the brine jar held against her ribs. A second jar came behind her in the arms of a shaking girl. Astrid's covered eyes turned toward the dead woman, then toward Torvald's opening cairn. "Ragnar," she said. The old woman near the back gave a broken cry. Ragnar died with fever. Her baby died before her. We put them near each other. We put them under stone because there was no fire. "She is holding the wrong child," Leif said, and wished he had not spoken it. "She is holding the only shape her death remembers," Astrid answered. Freya crouched at the edge of the cairn. Heat from her torch touched her cheek. Cold from the open grave touched the other. Between them lay Signy, alive and trapped in an embrace that had once been mercy. "Ragnar," Freya said. "Loose her." The dead woman's mouth moved. Frost broke from her lips. Cold. The word was not answer enough to be reason. It was not mind enough to bargain with. It was an echo. Ragnar had been cold. Her baby had been cold. The grave was cold. Now a living child was warmth in her arms, and the dead thing love had become would not release warmth simply because the living asked. Freya lowered her torch toward Ragnar's hands. Signe flinched. The dead woman's sleeve smoked where the heat touched it. Her grip loosened by a finger's width, then clenched tighter as the child's fear made her struggle. "Stop," Astrid said. Freya held still. Fire moves her. Fire may make her crush what she means to keep. Torvald shifted in the next cairn. A stone rolled Freya's boot. Beyond him, other shapes pressed at their burial stones. Not an army. That would have been easier to understand. These were fathers, brothers, wives, and hungry old men, each drawn by the noise, by memory, by fire, by the living who had failed to send them cleanly away. Ulfric reached the ring then, breathing hard. Snow clung to his cloak. He carried no torch at first, only an axe. When he saw the opened cairn and the living child under Ragnar's dead arms, the axe lowered. His law stood in front of him in flesh. "Get her out," he said. Freyr did not look away from Ragnar. That was already the plan. "Tell me what you need." It was the first useful thing he had said since the screaming began. Freyr pointed with the torch. "2 men on those stones. Pull them out from the side, not above her. If the cairn falls, it kills Signy. You hold Torvald back. Burn the hands, not the whole body yet. We need the pyre later. Leif, keep saying the child's name. Kari, do not come closer." Kari tried to stand. The woman holding her pinned her back. "Sine," Leif said. The girl's eyes moved toward his voice. "Signe," he said again, and this time others joined. The name steadied the living child, but it also changed the air. Torvald turned his head toward the sound. Ragnar's dead arms tightened, then trembled. Leif felt the danger before he understood it. Names gave shape, names called, names comforted. Names also carried. He kept speaking anyway because silence would abandon her. 2 men hauled stones away from the side of the cairn. One stone came loose with a wet scrape. Under it, Ragnar's lower body shifted. Her dead arms locked harder. Sine gasped. Freyr slid one hand into the gap and caught the child's wrist. Warm, weak, alive. "I have her," Freyr said. Ragnar's head snapped toward her. For one instant, Freyr saw not a monster but a mother at the edge of losing a child again. The sight was worse than hatred. Hatred could be cut. This could only be answered at cost. Astrid broke the frozen seal on the brine jar. Salt filled the air, sea, blood, old tears, food stores opened too soon. Every villager near the cairn knew the smell. Every stomach knew it. This was not magic from nowhere. This was winter food poured toward the dead. "Make me a line," Astrid said, "from this stone to the black root, wide enough for a child to cross, fast." Ulfric looked at the jar, and Freyr saw him measure fish, hunger, and breath. Then he took it from Astrid and poured. The brine struck the snow and cut a dark line through it. Steam did not rise at first. Nothing grand happened. No blue light came from the dead warden stones below. No god answered from the aurora. The line was only wet salt on snow, running unevenly because Ulfric's hand shook and the ground sloped under the cairns. Then Torvald reached across it. His burned fingers touched the brine. Frost snapped along his knuckles. The dead skin blackened where salt water clung. He pulled back with a sound like stones grinding under ice. The villagers saw it and breathed as one frightened body. "More," Astrid said. Ulfric poured again. This time the line widened from the cairn mouth toward the place where Freyr held Signy's wrist. Astrid knelt in the snow and pressed her fingers into the brine. She touched it to the cloth over her eyes, then to her lips. "Sea that keeps flesh from rot," she said, low and clear. "Sea that takes the drowned and gives back fish. Stand here. Not forever. Not freely. Stand here long enough for breath." It was not a chant that promised safety. It was a request with a price already open in their hands. The dead heard the salt more than the words. Ragnar flinched when the brine reached the edge of her sleeve. Her arms loosened. Signy sucked in one hard breath. Freyr pulled. The child came one handspan and stopped because her cloak had frozen under Ragnar's body. "Knife," Freyr said. Leif stepped forward with his belt knife before he remembered he was afraid. He crossed the brine line and felt the cold through his boots. For a heartbeat he thought of every name he had ever praised too easily. Dead raiders, hungry men, men who hid gold and called it provision. Then Sine whimpered, and all the large thoughts burned away. He cut the cloak below the dead woman's arm. Ragnar's hand lifted toward him, not striking, reaching. Her fingers brushed the air inches from his face. Leif smelled grave frost and old smoke from burial cloth. He wanted to speak Ragnar's name, to make her human in the moment before flame and salt denied her. He also feared what a name might do now. Astrid heard his silence. "Not yet," she said. Leif swallowed the name. Freya pulled again. Signy slid free with a tearing sound as frozen cloth parted from the dead woman's dress. The girl screamed then, a full living scream that hurt everyone and saved them from wondering if she still breathed. Ragnar rose after her. The movement was sudden enough to break the ring. Men stumbled back, torches lifted too high. Wind flattened the flames and nearly stole one. Ragnar came out of the cairn on her knees, arms open, face fixed on the child Freya held. "Mine," she said again. Signy clung to Freya's neck so hard that Freya felt the child's nails through wool. "No," Freya said. She backed across the brine line with Signy in her arms. Ragnar followed until her knees touched the salt-dark snow. The dead woman tried to crawl over it. White crust formed over her hands. She recoiled, then reached again, not understanding refusal, only loss. The sight tore the village in two. Some lifted axes. Some wept. One woman cried. She loved her baby, as if love could argue against what they saw. "Yes," Astrid said, "and death has made love dangerous. Remember both." "If you forget either, you will lie about tonight." Freya turned and thrust Sine into the arms of the old woman who had named Ragnar. "Take her down the slope. Keep her awake. Keep her warm. If she sleeps, shake her. If she asks for her mother, answer only with your hand on her back. No promises." The old woman took the child. Her face folded around grief and obedience. Kari fought loose from the woman holding her and ran to Enjal. The boy stood without his mitten, his bare fingers tucked under his arm. Kari pressed both hands around his wrist, as if she could hold him in the world by grip alone. "I brought fire," she said to Freya when Freya turned back. Her voice was almost gone. It was too small. Freya knelt in front of her. Torvald scraped at the far side of the brine line. Ragnar rocked near the cairn with her hands curled inward, held back by salt and loss. "You brought what adults made you think would fix it," Freya said. "That is not the same as failing." Kari began to cry harder, which was better than silence. Ulfric heard the words. He looked at the little stolen torch where it had almost died in the snow. A child's crime had exposed an adult law. It had not been enough to forbid fire. He had also failed to make the danger clear. He had made scarcity sound like wisdom and left mercy to become theft. "Bring the pitch," he said. A man near him stared. "For pyres?" Ulfric did not look away from Torvald. "For pyres, for torches, for enough flame that children do not have to steal scraps and call it rescue." No one cheered. The order was not triumph. It was surrender to a more brutal arithmetic. Astrid rose with help from Leif. Her knees were wet with brine and snow. "Do not spend all of it," she said. Ulfric's mouth tightened. "You told me to bring salt." "I told you to make a boundary. A boundary is not a cure. If you pour the winter into the snow, the dead may wait while hunger walks in by the door." The warning landed. Men carrying the second jar stopped before breaking its seal. Half, Ulfric said. No more, unless a body crosses. Freya looked at him then, and for the first time that night there was no argument between them about whether children or stores mattered. Both mattered. That was the cruelty. The dead forced the living to pay for every right answer with another need. They made the salt line wider, but not endless. They held torches low, but not wastefully high. They dragged loosened stones away from the open cairns and cleared paths for bodies that would have to be burned before dawn. Ragnar stayed on the far side of the brine, rocking in the snow. Torvald scraped beside her, driven back each time his hand met salt. Others stirred deeper among the cairns, but the line and fire kept them from spilling down the slope. Freya stood between the dead and the children until Sini's cries faded into shivering breaths below. Only then did she let herself look at the pyre wood coming up from the village. Planks, broken oars, roof slats, fish racks, and pieces of tomorrow carried in living hands. The pyres were built from things the village had meant to keep. A broken oar went first. Then a door from an empty shed. Then roof slats saved for spring repairs. 2 boys carried a fish rack between them and kept looking toward the stores because they knew what the loss meant. A woman brought the small stool her husband had made before fever took his strength. An old man laid down a plank he had shaped for a boat rib and kept his hand on it 1 breath longer than he needed to. None of it was extra. Every piece had already belonged to some future need. A dry roof, a sealed hull, a place to sit near a thin fire, fish hung above dogs and snow. The pyres rose from tomorrow's bones. Freya helped carry Ragnar first. The dead mother fought them until the brine-soaked rope touched her wrists. Then she stiffened. Smoke like frost curled from the rope, and her fingers opened and closed as if still searching for the child. Freya did not let the men drag her like refuse. "Lift her," she said. "She was Ragnar before she was this." One man muttered, "She nearly killed Senior." "Both things are true. Lift." They lifted. Leif stood beside a flat stone with strips of bark, hide, and pale wood laid before him. His charcoal stick shook in his hand. He had wanted to write as witness. Now he feared the work. He had seen Senior calm when her name was spoken. He had seen Torvald turn toward the same sound. He had felt Ragnar's name press against his teeth and stayed silent because Astrid told him not yet. Memory was no longer harmless. "Her name," Freya said when Ragnar lay on the first pyre. Leif looked at Astrid. The seer stood near the brine line, listening to the dead test, the salt. "Speak it for the living first," she said. "Do not sing, do not call, say it plainly." An old woman wiped her nose with the back of her hand. Ragnar, daughter of Osk. She sang badly and loud. Her baby was Inga. The little one died before her. A broken laugh passed through 2 people and became grief before it finished. Leif wrote Ragnar. Then Inga. He had not expected the baby's name to hurt more, but it did. A dead mother's arms around the wrong child made sense only when the right child had already been lost. He wrote slowly so the letters did not become ornament. "Ragnar, daughter of Osk," he said. "Inga, her child." The wind went still around the words. Freya set the torch to the kindling. The first flame crawled. Then it found pitch hidden in an old seam and rose fast. Ragnar's frozen dress blackened. Her hands curled toward her chest. For one terrible moment, the body seemed to be holding something again. Then the heat took the shape apart. Sine cried out from below the slope, not because she could see, but because some part of fear heard the fire. Freya closed her eyes for one breath. Then she opened them and went to the next body. Torvald took more flame. He had crawled farther from his cairn than the others. He had burned one hand against Kari's stolen fire and blackened the other on the brine line. Even with men holding him down with poles, he turned his head toward Enjal when the boy coughed. Ulfric stood over him with a torch. The chieftain did not ask forgiveness, not from Torvald, not from the village. Forgiveness would have made him smaller than the harm. He had denied fire. Torvald had risen. Children had nearly died. Now Ulfric spent the fuel he had guarded, and learned too late that saving a thing for tomorrow could destroy the night that had to be survived first. Torvald, son of Bera, Leif said after an elder supplied the full name. Brother. Netmender. Oathkeeper when living. The words were plain. They still changed the air. The fire took Torvald's hair first, then the burial cloth, then the stiff hands. When the heat reached the chest, a crack sounded through the body. Several villagers flinched. Njal hid his face against Kari's shoulder. The dead man did not rise again. That should have comforted them more than it did. More bodies followed. Some had only begun to stir. Some had not moved, but had been laid without fire under Ulfric's order and could not be trusted to remain still. The village argued over each one until arguing became a luxury. If a cairn had opened, if a hand had breached, if a body lay near those that had answered, it went to flame. With every pyre, the stores thinned. Pitch jars emptied by careful spoonfuls. Planks split under axes. Dry moss saved for hearths became kindling. Salt crusted the rope and the ground where the dead had been dragged across the boundary. Women began to count under their breath without meaning to. 1 door, 2 oars, half a rack, 3 planks, a skin of pitch, a jar of brine half gone. The counting spread because everyone understood a different part of the loss. The boatwrights saw a crossing delayed. The fishwives saw meat that would spoil sooner. Mothers saw hearths that would be colder when children woke crying. Old men saw repairs that would not be made before the next storm. No one had to explain the cost for it to become common knowledge. It moved from face to face as clearly as flame. Ulfric heard the counting and did not silence it. Earlier, he would have called it disorder. Now he let it stand. If the village was going to obey new fire discipline, it had to know what obedience had already spent. Leif wrote the names as each body burned. He did not make verses. He did not praise courage where there had been fever, hunger, theft, ordinary love, ordinary anger, and bad luck. He wrote names and what the living could bear to say aloud. He wrote Ragnar's bad singing, Torvald's nets, Halfdan's crooked thumb, old Svanhild's habit of feeding dogs she claimed to hate. The records made people weep harder. They also kept them from turning the dead into a single horror. Then the smoke changed. At first, a grey ribbon from Ragnar's pyre bent sideways instead of rising. Another column flattened over the snow and slid low between the cairns. Ash settled on the dead warden stones below until their dark runes looked dusted with bone. The wind should have carried the smoke away from the village. It did not. It curled back. A whisper moved through it. Ragnar. Freya looked up sharply. No one had spoken. The old woman who had named Ragnar covered her mouth. The smoke passed between them and the pyre, and the name came again, thinner, farther away, as if the fire had taken it somewhere and the wind had returned only the edge. Halfdan. Torvald. Leif dropped one strip of bark. He snatched it from the snow before flame or wet could take it, then held the bundle of written names against his chest. "I only meant to keep them," he said. Astrid turned her blind face toward the smoke. "You did keep them. That may be why something else can hear." The words did not accuse him. That made them worse. Ulfric shouted for wet blankets as sparks broke loose and flew toward the roofs below. The village split into urgent lines. Some beat snow into wool. Some carried children low through smoke. Others passed skins of water hand to hand toward the roof edges and the boat sheds. Fire had become mercy and threat in the same breath. Freya seized a soaked blanket and struck sparks from a stack of cut planks. Steam burst up around her arms. Her throat burned. The children coughed below. Men cursed as one ember landed on a hide covering the boat ribs and had to be smothered before it ate the last chance of crossing. Bodies were being answered. The debt was not leaving with them. By evening, the pyres had fallen into red mouths under ash. The living stood around them in a broken ring. No one wanted to leave first. Leaving meant trusting the bodies to stay answered. It meant walking back to houses that smelled of smoke and salt, to wood stacks cut lower than they had been that morning, to boats still waiting for pitch that had become flame for the dead. The village had survived the day by spending pieces of its future. The proof lay everywhere. The missing shed door. The cut place where a boat plank had been taken. The fish rack gone from its posts. The salt crust freezing in hard white scratches across the burial path. The pitch jar scraped nearly clean. The children breathing under borrowed cloaks. No one could look at one sign without seeing all the others. Freya sat with Signe on her lap near a watched fire. Kari and Nigel leaned against the same wall under a wool blanket. Angel's bare hand was wrapped in cloth. Kari kept waking whenever he moved, as if the burial ground might still reach through sleep. A woman came to take Signe from Freya. Then she stopped, her face twisted with shame. "She should be with blood," the woman said. Another woman answered too quickly. Blood held her in the can. Silence followed. The second woman began to cry because the words were cruel and true and not enough. Freya looked down at Signe. The child's eyes were open but unfocused. One cheek was raw where frozen cloth had pulled free from skin. Her small hand had locked in Freya's cloak. "Tonight she sleeps near a fire that is watched," Freya said. "Tomorrow blood can try again." No one challenged her. That was new. Freya felt it and did not mistake it for power. It was need. The village had watched her run first. They had watched her pull children from dead arms. Mercy had become practical in her hands, not soft, not clean, but useful. For tonight, useful was enough. Across the ash, Ulfric counted what had been spent. He made himself say each loss aloud. 1 door, 2 oars, 3 planks, half a fish rack, a cradle side, dry moss, pitch, brine, rope. He repeated each report after the person who gave it, because Leif should not carry the shame alone, and because command had to stand inside the cost it ordered. When a man said, "Enough salt for 3 barrels," Ulfric closed his eyes. Then he opened them. "Enough salt for 3 barrels," he repeated. No one thanked him for honesty. Honesty did not refill a barrel. Astrid stood near the last pyre with ash in her hair and salt-dried white on her hands. The cloth over her eyes had loosened. It fluttered from one knot, showing the ruined hollows beneath. She did not fix it. She was listening beyond the crackle of the coals. Leif came to her with the bundle of names tied in leather. "Should I burn these too?" he asked. The question cost him more than he expected. The names were not fine work. The letters were rough, crowded, stained by snow and smoke. Yet they felt alive in his hand, dangerous because they were alive. If he kept them, he might be keeping a door open. If he burned them, he might be killing the dead a second time in memory. Astrid did not answer quickly. "What did you mean them to do?" she asked. "Hold the dead as people. Keep fear from making them only monsters. Keep shame from becoming a cleaner story." He looked toward Ragnar's ash. But the smoke spoke them back. Yes. Then names can be taken. Everything can be taken when the world is hungry. Astrid held out her salt-whitened hand, not to seize the bundle, only to feel its shape. That does not mean the living should become silent. It means you must learn when a name is witness and when it is a call. Leaf gave a short, bitter breath. Do you know the difference? Not enough. The answer frightened him because it was honest. He had wanted a rule. He had wanted the seer to give him a clean way to keep memory without feeding whatever rode the smoke. Instead, she gave him the truth of the day. Useful things were costly, and costly things were not cures. Ulfric came near them. His face looked older in the ashlight. Will you sing this? He asked Leaf. Leaf looked at the pyres, at Freya holding Sina, at Kari and Nijal under the blanket, at the black warden stones below the burial ridge. He looked at Ulfric too, because the question was not only about song. A song could make a chieftain wise after the harm. It could make Freya fearless and erase the tremor in her hands. It could turn Kari's stolen fire into a brave tale and hide the adult failure that had sent her uphill. Not yet, Leaf said. If I sing too soon, I will make it cleaner than it was. Ulfric accepted the answer with a nod that carried no pride. The gale struck then. It came down from the burial ridge without warning. Ash lifted from every pyre at once. People covered their faces. The children cried out. Freya turned her body around Signy and felt ash patter against her back like cold rain. Astrid did not cover her face. She stood with both hands open at her sides. Snow and ash crossed her ruined eyes. Her mouth parted, not in surprise, but in recognition. The wind moved through the burned cairns, over the brine line, across the places where bodies had been dragged, and down toward the dead warden stones. The stones remained dark. Ash clung to their runes. No blue thread answered. No old boundary returned because the village had finally done what it should have done earlier. From the smoke came the names again, but now they braided together until no single voice could be separated. Ragnar, Torvald, Halfdan, Svanhild, others. The names did not sound peaceful. They sounded carried. Then the wind emptied around Astrid, and 3 words reached her with the force of a hand laid on the chest. Debt remains. She did not know whether the words came from hell, from the gale, from the dead, or from the truth the living had been trying not to speak. She refused to pretend knowledge she did not have. But she knew the words were not a warning for later only. They named the present. She turned toward Ulfric. The bodies are answered, she said. The village waited. Astrid's voice stayed steady because a shaking voice would make people search for a lie to stand on. The debt is not paid. Fire bought breath, not forgiveness. No one moved. Below the burial ground, the old fish store stood shut behind crossed beams. The sealed hoard waited inside with whatever had truly been surrendered. Around it, the village held the harder silence of what might still be hidden under beds, under floorboards, in mitten seams, in pockets no one had searched. No marked sign had shown itself yet. No name for the deeper hunger had been spoken. But the ash did not make anyone believe the gold problem had ended. Leaf felt the bundle of names under his cloak and wondered whether it was a record or a burden that could answer back. Ulfric looked from the dead stones to the spent pyres. His law had failed. Fire had worked. Fire had also consumed the stores he had tried to save. Brine had held the dead back. Brine had also taken food from the winter. Names had honored the dead. Names had also returned in smoke. He wanted, with a force that shamed him, to turn one of those facts into mastery. He wanted to say fire was the answer, or salt was the answer, or watchfulness would become the answer if he made it strict enough. The village wanted that too. He could feel them waiting for a law large enough to stand in place of forgiveness. They had lived through too much uncertainty in too few nights. A clean rule would be a kind of warmth. But a clean rule had sent 2 children up the ridge with stolen flame. He looked at Kari's bent head. He looked at Enjal's wrapped hand. He looked at Sini asleep and waking by turns in Freya's arms. If he gave the village certainty now, they would obey it until the next place where certainty failed, and children would pay again. There was no cure in any of it. There was only discipline. "From tonight," Ulfric said, his voice rough enough that some had to lean close, "no body lies unwatched. No flame burns unwatched. No name is spoken over the dead unless Leif or Astrid hears it. No child goes beyond the houses after dusk. If I break this, tell me. If you break it, I will answer." It was not comfort. It was not forgiveness. It was a watch set over a wound. Freya looked up from Sina. "And if a child runs because adults are arguing?" Ulfric took the blow in front of everyone. Then the adults answer first. The gale eased. Ash fell softly over the village, over the brine line, over the dark stones, over the closed fish store, and over the half-mended boats waiting for pitch that was gone. In the quiet after it, the children breathed. The dead did not rise. For that one night, breath remained. But beyond the watched fires, under roofs and floorboards and sealed beams, hidden wants still kept their own warmth. The village had bought silence with wood, pitch, salt, and names. The silence did not sound like peace. It sounded like the next reckoning waiting under ash. Thank you for listening. This chapter ends here, but the story continues. Follow the series for new chapters, and when you are ready, explore the other worlds and storylines waiting beyond this one. If you enjoyed this episode, leaving a like or a comment helps more listeners find the story.